6 p.m. in Bafoussam, chief town of the West region of Cameroon. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me on today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast. Representation, I am Immaculate Fogwe. Cameroon's Ministry of Transport wages war against frequent accidents recorded across the national territory. Officials of the Regional Delegation of Transport in the Lithra region began a sensitization campaign today. They visited some road transport agencies to sensitize drivers and passengers on the respective road safety measures and the highway code. Still in Cameroon, within the context when hate speech is on the rise in Cameroon, the National Communication Council engages on a sensitization tour to talk to journalists on the dangers of hate speech while warning them of what awaits them if they defy the law. And now out of Cameroon, the Senegalese government temporarily closed its consulate abroad following attacks on locations in Bordeaux, Milan, Paris, and New York. Those are major stories. The news in full in few seconds. Thank you so much for staying with us on today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast. So begin right here in the political capital, where Extempra workers of the National Shipyard and Industrial Engineering Company continue mounting pressure on the Prime Minister to unlock their dues blocked at the Ministry of Finance. They were on the street in Yaoundé today protesting. Babila Jonathan reports.
Former temporal workers of the National Shipyard and Industrial Engineering Company, Chantier Naval, sending a distress message to Prime Minister Chief Dr. Joseph John Guti in a protest in front of his office in Yaoundé Wednesday.
We have come to see the Prime Minister that the instruction he gave has not been executed.
They are asking for their dues, amounting to more than 1 billion francs CFA.
They disbursed 4 billion francs to pay us, the Extempra workers, and this money was not fully paid to us because there was a manipulation. They said they are supposed to give us 1 billion to calm down the situation while they are working on the 2.6 billion. That was in 2019. At this present stage where we are speaking to date, we have not entered in possession of that money.
For over 10 years, they have been mounting pressure on the Ministry of Finance to release the money to no avail. 562 temporal workers were laid off in 2010 after former General Manager Antoine Bikoro took over from his detained predecessor, Zacchaeus Fonjindan.
Babila Jonathan reporting there. As students and pupils go on holidays, officials of public transport are seeking ways of reducing the number of road accidents on the highway. Road safety agents, alongside members of the Lithra Regional Delegation for Public Transport, visited some transport agencies today to sensitize both drivers and passengers on the importance of respecting road safety measures and the highway code. Annabella tells us more.
Most Cameroonians can still remember the last 2 deadly road accidents on the National Road Number 1 and Nedea, respectively, in which several people lost their lives. Such fatal accidents should be avoided at all costs. It is one of the reasons public transport officials in the littoral and road safety agents are on the field to seek ways of reducing the number of road accidents on the highway, especially during this holiday period.
The Minister of Transport asked us to go to the field in order to sensibilize transporters and passengers in order to reduce the number of accidents in our roads.
Several road safety measures must be respected by transport agencies to achieve this goal. Overspeeding is an important aspect which must be looked into. The road safety agents check the tires, safety belts and also windscreens of the vehicles.
Nous avons constaté que les roues, il y a une ou 2 roues de ce bus qui est derrière nous.
We noticed that some tires are worn out and we have called the attention of those concerned, so the tires can be changed. We are in the rainy season, so windscreen wipers should be in good shape.
La voiture puisse véritablement adhérer sur la voie.
Transport agencies were advised to ensure that tired drivers and hostesses have a room to rest after a long journey. For about 3 months, the road safety agents will be present at the east and west entrances into the city of Douala.
And now to something else. The National Communication Council is bent on fighting against hate speech across the Republic of Cameroon. Visiting different media organs in the city of Douala, amongst them Equinoxe television, they alerted the administration and the staff of the sanctions that awaits any journalist who violates the law. Details with Mala Glory.
At the Equinoxe Media House, members of the National Communication Council describe hate speech as an enemy destroying national unity and integration. Expression of hatred has been on the rise in Cameroon for the last few months, and media men and women of this great institution have been called upon to join the government in fighting hate speech.
We came here just to sensitize journalists of Equinoxe TV that hate speech is not good. Hate speech can destroy our unity, our living together, destroy our nation. So we must avoid it.
The CEO and the editor-in-chief reminded the council that hate speech and xenophobia is not allowed in the institution, and for that reason, some panelists have been blacklisted from participating in debate programs on Equinoxe television.
Years ago, to fight against this type of hate speech, that's why you cannot see in our debate those people who carry this type of hate speech. And we are proud of what the CNC have done here today to exchange with journalists and sensitize them about this purpose. But we are not concerned by that because it's our main editorial line.
During the meeting, the Vice President of the National Communication Council reminded journalists of the different sanctions that await them.
A warning, we can also suspend you for a period not exceeding 6 months, and we can exclude you from the profession.
The editor-in-chief of the Equinoxe Media House, on his part, accused the council for partially doing their job.
Je veux comprendre pourquoi on ne m'a pas sanctionné en 2019. On a sanctionné mon collègue en 2022. Pourquoi je suis interpellé pour un invité qui met entre guillemets et dégage la responsabilité de ma chaîne.
The meeting ended with members of the National Council expressing satisfaction with the job carried out by Equinoxe Media House.
And now out of Cameroon, Senegal has temporarily closed its consulates abroad following attacks on the structures in Bordeaux, Milan, Paris, New York and many other areas. The closure comes amid political tensions in Senegal following the sentencing of opposition leader Ousmane Sonko last week to 2 years in prison, which led to deadly clashes. Malaglory once more tells us more.
The Senegalese government says it has reinstated internet access for mobile phones, although the connection has proved to be problematic for many on Wednesday, even for those using virtual private networks. In its statement, the Communication Ministry had said access to some social media platforms remained restricted. This follows deadly protests that erupted last week after opposition leader Ousmane Sonko was sentenced in absentia for 2 years in jail for immoral behavior but cleared of rape charges. His supporters fear the conviction could prevent the 48-year-old from contesting next year's presidential election. Sonko, who is also mayor of the southern city of Zinguchu, said the case against him was politically motivated and effectively remains under house arrest in capital Dakar. More than 100 civil society organizations and opposition groups have called for more demonstration this coming Friday and Saturday over suspicions that President Macky Sall might seek a third term, although he has not confirmed that he will. The government says the internet shutdown was necessary to stop hateful and subversive messages and videos, but right groups accuse it censorship. In addition to hindering opposition protests, it hampered many business, including those in informal sector that rely on the internet for their day-to-day operations. Senegal has temporarily closed its consulates abroad following attacks on diplomatic missions in Bordeaux, Milan, Paris and New York, among others. The Foreign Affairs Ministry said in a statement on Tuesday that the precautionary measure followed a series of aggressions that caused a serious damage. He said the consulate in Milan had been particularly hard hit, with passport-making machines and identity cards damaged. The closure comes amid political tensions in Senegal following the sentencing of opposition leader Ousmane Sonko last week. Italian media reported on Monday that about 40 Sonko supporters had gathered outside the consulate with flags and anti-government signs, breaking in and ransacking the offices before the police intervened. Senegal's foreign minister says consulate service will resume as soon as material and security conditions allowed.
And now we talk sports. Circulation within the Douala 3 subdivision will be perturbed on Thursday due to the International Cycling Tour of Cameroon that will be in Stage 5 tomorrow. Stage 4 that took place in the riders from Kribi to Douala was won by Moroccan cyclist El Adil, while Moroccan Mochine El Kouranji is keeping the yellow jersey. What's the itinerary of the closed circuit race in Douala tomorrow? Smaji Kangiril reports.
The economic capital will this Thursday play host to the 19th edition of the International Cycling Tour of Cameroon that will be in its 5th stage. It will be a closed-circuit race within Douala, covering a distance of 1,109.6 kilometers. According to the program put up by the Cameroon Cycling Federation, the start point of the race will be at Campus A of EUG, through Carrefour Entrée Laïque, Carrefour Pecat 10, Hôpital Santa Helena, Carrefour Marché Pecat 12, Institut Saint-Louis, Camp Génie Militaire, passes through Nyala, Total Logbaba, Douala 3 Council Building, Carrefour Tunnel Logbaba, and Tres Incantes, Arc Enterprise through EUG Health Center, and the arrival point will be at Campus A of EUG. The itinerary given by the Cameroon Cycling Federation means that circulation won't be fluid this Thursday in the Douala 3 subdivision. The winner of Stage 4 of the race from Kribi to Douala, covering a distance of 106.1 kilometers, was El Abdil of Morocco, while the best Cameroonian cyclist from Kribi to Douala was Kamzong Abesolo Clovis, who came fifth. The yellow jersey of the best rider is held by El Kohaji Mushini of Morocco.
And that's it for the first part of the news. Talking Point is up next. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us on the second part of the news. Corruption and embezzlement are some of the vices deterring the development and protection of human rights in Cameroon. Despite the existence of mechanisms put in place by the international community to combat corruption and embezzlement, it is still on the rise. The question now is, what can be done to curb corruption in Cameroon? Tonight, I will be having as guest Edith Kabangwala, president of the Cameroon People Party, CPP. She's equally a member of the Stand Up for Cameroon. Good evening, and thank you so much for accepting my invitation, Edith Kabangwala. Today, we'll be looking at how corruption has been affecting the country. What do you think about the fact that individuals embezzle as much as hundreds of billions of francs CFA from state coffers? According to the National Anti-Corruption Commission, CONAC, over 43 billion francs CFA was embezzled in 2021 alone.
The paradox of the BR regime is that they have created anti-corruption commissions, CONAC, Antique, and so on. These commissions work, they produce reports, and decades after, nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens. So you can go through the CONAC reports for the past 10 years and you will get details on how much money has been stolen, by whom it has been stolen, when and where. But unfortunately, if you follow up and see what have been the consequences of this, it is almost non-existent. So we realize that we have a government that does not have any good faith in actually fighting corruption.
And according to CONAC, out of the close to 6 trillion embezzled in 7 years, barely 6 billion has been recovered. Should we really count on Operation Sparrowhawk?
Not at all. As I say, the Biya regime does not have, it is a regime that functions on corruption. Corruption is a key pillar of what enables this regime to stay in power. So they are not interested in truly fighting corruption. They use the Operation Sparrowhawk and so on as tools for their political fights. But no, we Cameroonian citizens cannot count on this regime to bring corruption to an end in Cameroon.
Many regard the operation as a weapon of elimination against political enemies. Do you share the same view?
Of course. We have seen it used by Mr. Biya himself when he had the G11 who were thinking about succession from him. He used this Operation Sparrowhawk to eliminate all of those who had discussed succession, which was a normal thing at the time because he was supposed to leave. He was at the end of his term, and at the time there were term limits. But he used Operation Sparrowhawk to eliminate those who were talking or thinking or planning about succession. Today, it is used not only by Biya himself, but also by those who are fighting for succession, who are preparing for after Biya. So we see them using this. All of them are corrupt. All of them are corrupt. If we have to have a real Operation Sparrowhawk, the majority of our government in place will go to jail. We saw that with the COVID funds. The COVID reports implicated over 20 ministries in Cameroon. So we know that they don't really want to fight corruption, and that whenever they do things, it is actually in their political infighting within their party. It has nothing to do with Cameroonians and our standard of living or our conditions of living.
And after civil embezzlement cases such as what became known as COVID-Gate, AFCON and Glencoe affairs, many are asking, why is the government not taking stringent measures and actions against alleged embezzlers?
And I think the case where we saw this the most clearly so far is the Martinez-Zogo affair. This government knows, even as they are using these corruption battles to fight against one another, the reality is that if they push to a certain level, everybody will come down. Everybody will be affected. And so you see them, they push to a level, then they stop. They make noise about something, but then they don't take any real action. So we actually realize that I think it's important for Cameroonians to wake up. It's important for Cameroonians to wake up. This government is stealing money which goes into the pockets of individuals for their individual benefit. They have been stealing money and then They ask us as Cameroonians to pay the bill. This is what the tax law in January was about. We saw an increase in fuel prices. We saw an increase in administrative taxes. We saw an increase to get children's results from schools. So people are stealing money out of the country's coffers, the money which belongs to us, which is supposed to build a road, build a hospital, build a school. This money they are stealing. And when they run into difficulty in paying their bills, they now call on Cameroonians to go into the pockets where we don't have to pay for the expenses of the country. We can no longer continue to allow this to happen. Cameroonians have to bring this to a stop.
In your opinion, what could be the best strategy to fight corruption, embezzlement, and mismanagement in Cameroon?
Well, the case of Chantier Naval also shows us the incompetence of the BR regime, because Mr. Fonjinam was arrested on charges of corruption. You would then imagine that those who take over after him, the company should do better. But as you said, everything has been going down. Worse, about 10 years after keeping this gentleman in jail, we discovered the charges of corruption. They moved from 1 billion to 800 million to now less than 100 million. This is not understandable on the part of the government. Does that mean that government went to arrest somebody without carrying out a proper investigation? Does that mean, so this is a case which shows us that the Operation Sparrowhawk is really about political infighting and not about the fight against corruption. And we see so many people's rights then being violated. So it is improper. If somebody has stolen, let him go to jail. But if somebody has not stolen and you finally almost don't have any charges of corruption against the person, one, what is the person still doing in jail? And two, then what actually happened to the money? And why is the company unable to function till date?
Madam Edith, these ills have killed several state companies, depriving Cameroonians of jobs, their sources of livelihood, and the economy of the country of growth. One of the recent examples is the National Shipyard and Industrial Engineering Company, Chantier Naval, which has been going down the drain since the arrest and detention of the former general manager, Zacchaeus Fominjam, in 2008. What is your take on this case?
Of course, these cases where government, sometimes Mr. Biya himself, has instructed payment to compensate Cameroonians for some violation which has occurred. We could have a very long list over decades of these cases, and where the money is not paid. Sometimes the money has left the treasury, but it has never arrived in the pockets of those who were actually supposed to be compensated. Sometimes it has never left the treasury. And this is why we must conclude as Cameroonians, once again, there is nothing to be done with this government. We should stop this case by case. Today there is this case, the next day there is this case. People keep fighting, keep shouting about the cases. The problem is not the cases. The problem is the government. If you have a thief, you cannot be surprised that somebody steals today. You keep him in the same position. The next day he steals again. You are surprised that he has stolen the next day. 3 days later he steals again. You are still surprised. 2 weeks later you are still surprised. This does not make any sense. This does not make any sense. The problem is not each case. The problem is the government, the regime which is in place, which has used corruption as a means to maintain their power, and they will continue doing so. So it is up to us as Cameroonians to determine whether we are going to leave them there or we are going to remove them from our national wealth before they finish it, because the rate at which these people are going, at some point in time, we are going to be bankrupt as a country. We are going to be bankrupt, and at that time, it is every single Cameroonian. We are already suffering from their poor management today, but we will get to the stage where the suffering will be unbearable. So we as Cameroonians today, we are the ones who have a responsibility to come together in our movements, in our political parties, in our associations. This is not a political problem, it is a citizenship problem. Because the money which has been stolen is money for schools, it is money for roads, it is money for hospitals. We cannot be a country who people go to hospital and are kidnapped by the hospital. We have pregnant women who give birth and the hospital locks them in the hospital because they cannot pay the bill. And yet we are counting billions and billions and hundreds of billions which are being stolen by other individuals. This does not make sense. It does not make sense. So we as Cameroonians, it is our responsibility. Thieves do not catch themselves. A thief does not wake up one morning and say, oh, I'm no longer going to steal. No, it is we whose property is being stolen who have the responsibility to catch the thief. And it is our responsibility at this point in history to catch the thieves in the BR regime and put them to one side in order to get our wealth and rebuild our country.
Edith Kabawangala, former temple workers who are asking for more than 1 billion CFR dues owe them since 2011 when they were laid off. According to them, the Prime Minister had given instructions to the Minister of Finance to pay out the money, but it was blocked at the level of the Ministry of Finance. Could this be a manifestation of corruption?
Well, I will go answer that question from the point of view of the citizens. Citizens that we are, one, we have reached a stage where citizens must organize themselves. They must join groups like those of us at Stand Up for Cameroon, like those who are striking in the hospitals, in the schools, and so on. Citizens have to join those groups and put forth the different elements in the different sectors. We had a COVID gate because we at Stand Up for Cameroon stood up to demand accountability. We must demand accountability in healthcare, in education, for roads, and so on and so forth. Coming together, demanding accountability is the way, the only way we will get this government to stop.
Thank you so much for being part of Talking Point today.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. And my message to Cameroonians, get engaged. The country, we are losing the country. Get engaged.
And that was Edith Kawala, president of the Cameroon People's CPP Party, speaking there. And that's where we put a cap to today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. Have a lovely evening.